Hello and welcome to the It's Record Time podcast. I am your host Alex, and this is the show where each week I'm joined by a different guest to discuss their favourite albums, biggest influences, and the bands that they love. Except this week I'm not. I'm not joined by a guest. This is actually a roundup of a few of my favourite moments from the first season, and an announcement about season 2 as well. So this episode is going to include some clips from Frank Turner, from Jen from the Bombpops, TJ from the Barstool Preachers, Beans on Toast, and Luke and Mark from Call Me Malcolm as well. I'm going to be introducing the clips as we go, but basically these are a few moments that I really enjoyed. If you haven't heard all of the episodes before, hopefully this is a good chance to find out some things that you've been missing out on, and go back to and listen to some other full episodes if something takes your fancy. But like I said, this isn't just a roundup of season 1. This is an announcement about season 2. As you might have noticed, I've been absent from putting out episodes for a few months now. And if you follow me on my socials, I've been absent from doing anything on there for quite a while as well. This is basically because I've been very, very busy with my real job. I've also been going to shows again and going to the pub far too much. I also moved house in that time, and I had to decorate my new house. And in the last couple of days, I got engaged as well. So it's all been going on. But over that time, I have also recorded a few episodes for the next season. These are going to be going out in the next few weeks. Some of the first few chats in this are going to be with Sum 41, Bowling for Soup, and Direct Hit, and I'm really excited for you to hear them all as well. I think they're really great. They were a lot of fun to record as well. I need to just get around to actually editing them now. But that's about it for me. I'm going to be popping up during the episode to introduce a few of these clips as we go, and I'll be back at the end for some more nonsense as well. But first, I'm going to introduce the first clip. It's going to be Frank Turner talking about the first album he ever purchased. Recording with Frank, to be honest, I found completely wild. I've been a big fan of his for the best part of about 15 years now. But it was great to chat with him. He was really generous with his time. He was very, very funny, and I really recommend you check out that full episode if you haven't before. But without further ado, here he is.
Yes, I can. The first album that I purchased, as in with my money, I mean, this is when I was about 10 years old, so it's pocket money, so you can argue the toss on that, but was actually Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. The first album I ever got was Killers by Iron Maiden, which my dad got me. My parents don't believe in modern music, rock and roll, certainly not heavy metal, but I'd stumbled across the music of Iron Maiden, expressed an interest, and my dad picked up a cassette copy of Killers from the R price at Waterloo Station, if you can imagine a world in which there was a record shop at a station anymore. But anyway, and he brought it home and he gave it to me, and I lost my shit, and my parents were extremely disappointed in this. I'm not sure. I think my dad still regards it as his central parenting error in life was buying that cassette, because it changed everything for me. It was like a light switch going on. And then, I listened to it to death, and then I think it took me like a couple of weeks to triangulate that there was more than one Iron Maiden album that existed. I was like, oh my God, there are other ones like this. So I went out and I got Number of the Beast was the second one I got. I can't remember this specifically, but it must have been from the R price in Winchester, because that's where we were. And yeah, I remember loving it.
So many people, when I ask them that question, they come back with something terrible. For reference, Beans on Toast was on here a couple of weeks ago, and his was Do the Bartman by The Simpsons.
Yes.
And he said then, if anyone says that their first album is something cool, they're lying. But I think you're the exception that's just proven this rule. Because Killers is a great album.
It is a great one. It's arguably still my favourite Maiden record, funnily enough. But I know exactly what Jay's talking about. I had a long argument with some people a few years ago, which was utterly pointless. But I just got into trouble with certain denizens of the underground scenes to punk rock internet presence, because I made the point that nobody gets into Black Flag or Catharsis or any whatever underground band you want to cite just by randomly buying one of their records every day. Everybody gets into them via Green Day or Offspring or Blink-182 or whoever it might be, and that therefore gateway punk bands are an entirely reputable thing in life. Like, good for them. Well done. And I fucking love Green Day and Blink-182 and Offspring. I don't care. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it was my stumbling across Iron Maiden was completely random. I was playing Games Workshop, Yes, it's true. With a friend of mine, his older brother had an Iron Maiden poster on the bedroom wall, and I thought it was something to do with Games Workshop. It looked like it was sort of in the same universe, and said to my mate, "Oh, that's cool," and he said, "Oh, it's a band," and I said, "Get out of here! There's no band that's that cool. How could a band be that cool?" I didn't really know any bands at that point in my life. I think I've heard Sergeant Pepper by the Beatles in the car, and that was about it. And then, made this kind of random Hail Mary request to my dad. So, there were reasons for it. And the other moment in my own personal musical journey, which was, I went out and sort of gradually bought all the Maiden records that were out at the time on cassette. This was up to and including No Prayer for the Dying, for those of you who want to be nerdy about this. And then I remember it was like a Christmas family gathering, and a distant cousin of mine, who's 10 years older than me, was cracked up by the fact that I was this 10-year-old who was like, Number of the Beast. And he sort of was like, there are other bands like this as well. And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And he then made me a tape that had AC/DC Thunderstruck on one side and Judas Priest Painkiller on the other side.
Nice.
And gave me that, and that was almost as big an explosion in my mind, because it was like, there are other bands, and then I got into Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer and Pantera and everything else. But it was that moment of realizing I made this kind of completely like isolated event.
So presumably you started. So you were about 10. So this is early 90s.
Yeah, this is sort of 92-ish.
So presumably you must have started playing guitar not that long after this. Was it when you first started playing? Was it playing this sort of thrash metal stuff?
Yeah, badly, yes. I mean, the very first thing that happened, I think it was my 11th birthday. I got the Argos starter kit, where you get a black and white flat copy, which, funnily enough, is over there currently, and like a 30-watt amp, and it comes with a strap and a lead, and all this sort of business. And cost like 80 quid or something. And my parents got it for me. Actually, my birthday's right next to Christmas, and I figured out around that age that I could combine birthday and Christmas presents in order to up my sort of potential spend, as it were. So yeah, I got that for Christmas. And I don't know, I guess it's just a facet of my personality. I'm quite participatory. I'd heard this thing that I loved, and it was like, cool, how do I do that? How do I get involved in doing that? And I got, I remember actually I got Bert Whedon's Play in a Day, which was useful. And I also got like the tab to Seventh Son of the Seventh Son or something, which was a fucking mystery to me, and kind of still is, because I'm nowhere near good enough to play any fucking Maiden songs. But that was actually that was a big part of where AC/DC figured in my life, is that AC/DC riffs were kind of comparatively easy to play, and that was quite useful to me as a kid. And actually, then my other massive, huge signpost moment at that point in my life, and it was actually probably only about 2 years later, but obviously when you're a kid it feels like a lifetime, was Nirvana. I figured out that Kerrang was a thing because the Iron Maiden were on the cover one time, so I started buying Kerrang magazine. Actually, funnily enough, my parents banned me from buying Kerrang magazine because the first one I ever bought had a feature on Cannibal Corpse in it, and they were just like, no. So I used to have to like shoplift it or sneak off and buy it or whatever. But Nirvana were in Kerrang quite a lot at this period of time, so 93, 94, and I got bang into Nirvana, as you might do. And again, part of the reason for that, because by this point I was sort of playing in a bedroom band with two of my best friends, was that we couldn't fucking play anything off Justice for All. Jesus Christ, still can't. Whereas I remember when In Utero came out, we got it, and we had a crap version of Heart Shaped Box together, a couple of weeks later. And I'm not saying it was any good, but we could at least sort of slaughter our way through it. And that was quite vivid. Do you know what I mean? Almost in a way, that's a kind of punk rock moment, that moment when it's like, I can do this too.
So presumably then more of the, I guess more like skate punk stuff, which came out around 94, 95, 96, you gradually moved into that sort of stuff as well?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so then the next part of the story was that Kurt Cobain used to refer to himself as a punk quite often in interviews. And also, incidentally, when he then died, I took that as a personal affront because I was a recent fan, and it was like, well, you know what I mean? I was planning on seeing you live. But I don't mean to be disrespectful to the day. He was a genius. he'd use the word punk, and like the two guys I was in band with, our drummer's uncle knew about music, and he was pretty much the only person we knew who knew about music. So I remember we said to him, "What's punk?" Uncle Simon or whatever, and he laughed, and he told us to go and get Nevermind the Bollocks and the first Clash record, which we did, and those were both pretty kind of life-changing records. Incidentally, I love the Clash, but I'm definitely on Team Pistols as far as those first two go. Jesus fucking Christ. Nevermind the Bollocks is one of the most viscerally brilliant records ever made. Anyway, and kind of got into that kind of stuff. And then that then chimed with sort of just at that moment in time, Green Day sort of arrived. And like people I knew who hadn't been part of this little band that I was doing with my mates were suddenly into Green Day, who were a punk band. And it was like, what? And then I suppose I'd better be into that too. And I remember, went out and got Dookie and got Smash, both incredible records. And then I don't know about you, I sort of feel like, I think this is probably true of any given sort of fad or explosion or however you want to put it in music. But like for every 10 kids I knew who got into Green Day and Offspring, 3 would have a NoFX record, maybe. Do you know what I mean? And then of those 3, 1 would get a Black Flag record. So there was a filtration process. And I don't mean to kind of try and accrue any sort of like personal value in saying that, but it just seemed to be how it worked, And I got into that world of, do you know what I mean? By, we used to triangulate thanks lists. Me and my mates. So what you do, you'd have a copy of, you'd have like, let's say you get 3 punk records. So you've got like Smash, Dookie, and Punk and Drublic or something, or and then all those bands always used to endlessly thank bands in their thanks lists. So you'd sit down, you'd look through, and if there was one band that appeared on all 3 thanks lists, it was like, right, we've got to fucking get into them next. So then you add them to the pile, and then you do it again, and that was a way, because this is pre the internet, and there were no magazines. I mean, Kerrang would write about the top end of that scene, but no one wrote about Dag Nasty or any of that kind of shit. Do you know what I mean? So, and for the most part, that was a really cool way of getting into music, because it was quite sort of, you're kind of going in blind a lot of the time. And a lot of these records we had to order from the record store. Actually, the guy who worked at the record store in our price in Winchester got to the point where he put aside anything that was on Epitaph for me and my mates, which was pretty cool. Do you know what I mean? And again, 9 times out of 10, that'd be fucking great. I mean, it did also mean that there were some moments as well here and there. But, and then there were the samplers, Fat Wreck and the Fat Music, Fat People, and then all the Epitaph, Punkorama samplers and all that kind of shit. So, there were ways of kind of getting into stuff, but it was a more sort of gradualist process, I think, back then than it is now.
So like, out of those bands you've just mentioned, especially on the punk side, there's NoFX are in there, Offspring in there, Green Day are in there. You've played with, or in some way presume know, pretty much all of those bands that you've just name checked.
Yeah, that is true. That was not deliberate, I should add. But yeah.
This is the problem of you just being the most prolific tourer in the world, Frank. You've just ended up playing with everyone. But do you ever get over that fact, being like, shit, this is the stuff I listened to in my bedroom as a kid, and now like I've just released a split with NoFX? Like,
well, I mean, the short answer is fuck no. The NoFX split is a specific case, which we'll come to in a minute. But I toured with Social D, and like White Light, White Heat, White Trash was one of my absolute fucking favorite records when I was a kid, and one of the I think almost one of the first records I bought when I went beyond Green Day and Offspring. Do you know what I mean? We toured with them back in 2010, and funnily enough, actually nobody in my band knew who they were. I was like, you guys are fucking idiots. And I was extremely stoked about that. I toured with the Offspring in 2009 at their request. I mean, fucking hell, what do you say about things like that? And I suppose what I should probably do is not say very much, but I certainly don't want to come across like I'm not stoked by it. Do you know what I mean? It's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And it will always be amazing to me. I hope I never lose a sense of wonder about that, because that strikes me as a shitty kind of personality direction to go in. The NoFX thing in particular is crazy. I mean, I've been friends with Mike for over a decade. We met at Reading Festival one year. I ended up playing guitar with them that day, funnily enough. Matt Skiba was supposed to play guitar on the End of the Decline, and he'd done a runner. And there was a panic backstage, and someone was like, who knows how to play it? And I was like, I do. And we had mutual friends or whatever, and it got sorted out. But then, and Mike has always sort of said he was a fan of my stuff, but that's what you say to your friend who's a musician. Do you know what I mean? You don't kind of go, yeah, I love you as a person. Your music's rubbish. But so I'd always taken it slightly with a pinch of salt. And then summer 2019, he turned around and we were at a festival together in Italy, both playing. And he just said, "Do you want to do a mutual cover split?" And I was like, yes. I mean, like, pushing down the kind of the euphoria a little bit to remain externally cool. But I mean, I think, if I had to pick a list of things that I've done in my career that I would, a top 3 or whatever, of things that I consider the most impressive, that was definitely on that list, unquestionably. Fuck me, I did a split with no effect. And certainly it wins every stupid fucking internet argument about punk forever.
Just pull out the Fat Mike card every time you grow.
It's like a blue tick in the punk world doing a split with no effect. Fuck off. Do you know what I mean?
And that was Frank there talking about the first album he ever purchased. Moving on, we're now going to be listening to a clip from Jen Razavi from the Bombpops. I've got a feeling, I can't quite remember, but I think Jen was the first episode I actually recorded. I know it's certainly the first one that went out. It was recorded a couple of days before Christmas, just over a year ago. Jen was great. We had a really, really long talk. We had a nice chat about Christmas and her dog as well, which I think a lot of that got cut in the end. The clip here isn't actually, though, going to be talking about any of the albums she recommended during the chat. It is talking about the Liquid Death Greatest Hits Volume 2 album that she was working on, or had just come out by that point as well. Which, if you haven't listened to it, I really recommend. But I will let Jen talk about it now. Bye. I wanted to ask as well, before we move on to speaking about some other people's music, I wanted to ask you about the Liquid Death Greatest Hits Volume 2 album, which came out in November. So for people who don't know Liquid Death, I don't think it's available over in the UK. I haven't been able to find any. And I can't get the record shipped over here yet either, which has quite upset me. But can you explain what Liquid Death is and the idea behind the Greatest Hits album?
Yes. Well, first of all, we should have international shipping on that very soon. So
Amazing.
I've got a few people. I'll add you to my list that are like, let me know when it is. I'll let you know. Yeah, so Liquid Death is a water company. It's as simple as that, really. But we're not just a water company, in that we are like we have a cult following, kind of like a band. We are sell canned water. It's Austrian spring water, so it's actually canned in Austria.
Yeah.
And we have still and sparkling. And our main thing is death to plastic. It's like everyone has to drink water. Everyone is drinking out of water bottles, and it's single-use plastics are a really huge problem for the world. And that was the motivation. That's kind of what sets us apart is canned water, but also they're like a tall can. And there's this kind of like heavy metal branding behind it. If you see our logo, and the name is called Liquid Death. And we really kind of just go over the top with our marketing, because it's just like, why not have fun with it? It's like you're selling water, and every other brand of water is just really boring. Like, is it cool? Like, there's nothing cool about Aquafina or I don't know, Evian. I mean, I guess there used to be like that was like a high class type thing, or Fiji water. But just to have water that you'd want to drink at a show or with your friends. And I think that there's a huge place for it, not just for sustainability, but like a lot of younger kids aren't just drinking beer. They've skipped their beer phase and they're on to like seltzers or whatever, or there's just weed is huge, so
yeah.
You hanging out at a show, you've got to like sip on something. It's might as well have something cool in your hand. So yeah, but unfortunately, or not unfortunately, fortunately, a lot of people like don't understand the brand. And to be honest, the first time that I saw it, I was like, what? This is ridiculous. But it tastes good, And then they sent me some, and they sent the band some. And I remember at the time I was like living at my dad's house because I had moved home for, to go on tour. And so it was shipped to my dad's house, and my dad was like, "This is so stupid. What is this?" And but he couldn't stop talking about it. It's like anytime someone would come over, he's like, "Do you want a liquid death?" And like just it's a conversation starter. So there's that aspect of people of it to people, but and then in our marketing campaigns, it'd be like because of the metal aspect, there's like a lot of it is like a lot of satanic imagery, and our commercials are pretty dark in that matter, and it really does offend some people. Like they can't believe that we use Satanism in our in our marketing. There's a lot of we just have some over the top like cartoon advertisements. You can watch them on YouTube if anyone wants to like see what I'm talking about here. They're pretty gory, and so a lot of them. We had a lot of comments on our social media, YouTube, and like, "How dare you, promote violence to kids," and all of this stuff. So Liquid Death made earlier this year. They actually made volume one is a death metal album, and it was produced by Gus Rios, and had some other people play on it in the death metal world, some people on Relapse Records. I'm not really familiar with the death metal world, but it had some, great names on the album. And
Yeah.
I think Gus Rios was the main guy that produced it, and Blasco as well, who's a guitar player. He's played for Ozzy Osbourne and works with Rob
Very
Zombie.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very on brand.
Yeah, super cool. So they that was the original album, and that's funny, and that's super funny because sorry, all the lyrics for the album, both volumes, are all actual internet hate comments. And so they're all real comments, and set to, the first one is death metal, and the death metal one is really funny because you can't understand the lyrics really, which is you can't really understand the lyrics in death metal anyway. So it's like, "Rawr, rawr." But if you read it, it's these like ridiculous comments like "fire your marketing guys," or whatever, "fire your marketing team," and so they wanted to do another one, and I was working for them at the time, and the CEO asked if I was into producing it, and then I was like, yeah. And we kind of just were going back and forth on some ideas. And he was like, yeah, that'd be awesome if you could like, have some other people play on it in punk bands. And he was like, do you know Brendan Kelly from the Lawrence Arms? I was like, I do. He's a good friend of mine. He's like, do you think he'd be into working on it with you? Like the CEO really thought it'd be cool if Brendan Kelly was on it, and we kind of had a blend of voices. And I was like, yeah, I'll ask him, and sure enough, Brendan was down. And then at that point, it's like we had a West Coast representation, which was myself, and we had a Midwest representation, being the Lawrence Arms. And we thought it'd be really cool to, like, in the spirit of, American punk, to get someone from the East Coast to like collaborate as well, so that we could have like a blend. And the idea was to have all of our voices on all songs. So on the East Coast, we brought in Chris Number Two from Anti Flag, and it's like I love Chris Number Two. Brendan and Chris get along really well, and it was just an amazing dream team. So we all three of us wrote the songs and demoed them. And
so how do you? I was interested in the writing process for this.
Yeah.
So you effectively just got given a load of negative messages from people, a load of
correct. Yeah, they gathered the messages from all like Facebook, Instagram, emails, some YouTube comments and stuff like that. And so they just sent me a Google Drive folder of the comments, and then I went through them initially and like these ones are hilarious, and then kind of like because it's different for like the death metal album, because there's not quite like hooks, in death metal. Whereas, and we on my end for like for my songs, it's like, and for Chris and Brendan too, we wanted to like get some of these hooks, pop punk type of hooks in there, and so we would kind of like piece together some of the best comments. So like, putting together two comments that were kind of the same and then putting them into one song. So we did some arranging, and Brendan and I arranged, and then we brought Chris in. And yeah, I wrote my songs at home, like, and then Brendan wrote his, and we sent them to Chris when we brought Chris on. And Chris was like, all of quarantine has been having like a song studio. So he's said he'd written like 70 songs or something and
Wow.
since this started. And so we sent him our voice memos. And Brendan and I have the same type of like voice, like how I demo is the same as Brendan does, where it's just acoustic guitar and vocals. And
Mm.
so we sent them to Chris, and Chris comes back in like 10 minutes with a full-on demo. It's like, well, how did you do that? And so he demoed ours, and which made it really the process a lot faster. And then Chris wrote songs as well. Then Chris and Brendan flew out to California, and we recorded, which was great. I mean, that was a window of 2020 where that was safe enough to do. And we all got COVID tests, and Josh from the Bombpops played drums on it. It's funny because we discussed some other drummers, like guest drummers to have on, and once we were discussing that, Chris was like, "Why? Like you have like the best drummer. We need Josh. Like there's no reason, especially for the style of what we're doing. Like no, like no way." And Brendan, Neil Hennessy from the Lawrence Arms lives in Los Angeles too, so he was an option. But because it was a little bit more of this, and he would have been great as well. It's just like, but because it was kind of like, I don't know, Josh was, I think the style really fit
Yeah.
Josh just well. And yeah, so it was a lot of fun. And I cannot tell you how fun it was in that studio, because it's like, I remember the song, it's called The Flu, and it's like syphilis, gonorrhea, and the flu. It's like someone was like, I hope everyone at this company gets syphilis, gonorrhea, or the flu. And it's like, wow, okay. And so we were in there singing, and Chris number 2 was like, okay, so Jen, do you want gonorrhea or the flu? Because Brendan has syphilis. And I was like, what is going on?
What I found amazing about the album is that like it sounds really good anyway, and like I really enjoy the amount of energy that's gone into like essentially just a ridiculous joke. Like it really tickled me. There was one of the lines which was I've been in the beverage industry for 27 years or whatever, and it just absolutely killed me when I first heard it. It's
Dude, me too. And it's such a like that's such a flex. Like somebody out
yeah.
there is like, I've been in the beverage business for 27 years, and like it full on. The whole comment was, I grab a can of liquid death before it disappears, like so many forever, like so many others. And it's like, it's so funny because I mean, I've worked in bars and restaurants, and when beverage like reps come in, it's, I mean, no diss to like square beverage reps out there, but like there's a very stiff person, and it's like you're coming in with a tie to like sell us, beer or whatever. But the whole sales team at Liquid Death is just punk rock, and a lot of people they don't have actually like like that background. A lot of the sales reps.
Yeah.
Holly's just got hired on as a sales rep now for Liquid Death, and she's never
Awesome.
worked in that, but she has you have to have like the bravado to be a sales rep. So it's really, that song is like one of my favorites, because I'm like, this is the anthem, like this is like the anti, I don't know, fuck you for like the whole sales rep team at Liquid Death, because it's like some person, it's like such a funny flex. And I really thought it was funny in that case, like to repeat the 27 years.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh yeah, 27 years, like 27 long years.
For every track on that record, I just end up picturing what that person looks like.
So that was what we were doing when we were in the studio, actually, like when we were delivering these
Okay.
lines, because it was so funny. And it's like we all wrote the songs, but we all have lines on the songs. So it's not like I just sang on the songs that I wrote or vice versa. And so we're getting in there, and we're just like, sometimes I'd be like, I don't know what's my angle for like singing this. And we all just kept being like, just think of that angry mom, or you think of that person that it's this like square Christian person at home that can't believe, we use Satanism, and man, we were dying. Like I have Paul Miner, who is the engineer, and he used to be in Death by Stereo. He's just a great go-to guy in Southern California. The Bombpops recorded a track there for that Red Scare comp, actually, and this is really quality work. I love how he works, and he was like, I haven't had this much fun making a record in so long. It's like, neither have I. I mean, I've making the Bombpops record is a different kind of fun.
Yeah.
This is like just insane. And being in the studio with Chris and number 2 and Brendan was such a delight, because both of them are so smart and so fucking funny, and but so completely different, and like, oh my gosh, I could listen to those two go on for days just with each other, or it's fascinating people to be around. And what the heck, that would not have happened. There's no way that would have happened if there wasn't a pandemic, because we would all be on tour. We all, Anti-Flag, Lawrence Arms, and Bombpops, all had albums come out this year. We'd be on tour. There'd be no way we'd be able to like get in a room together to make this album. So that was really special, and one of the cool things that happened this year. Yeah.
Listening back to that clip there, I've just realised that I haven't actually managed to get a hold of a copy of that album vinyl yet. If anyone in the UK has one that they're willing to sell for a reasonable price, please send me a message. Right, so coming up next, we have a clip from TJ from the Barstool Preachers. This is quite a short clip, this one, but it was one that when I was thinking about what I would want to include in this episode, this story he tells about being on the road with the band came straight to my mind, so I wanted to include it. I actually managed to bump into TJ about a month ago now at a show, a local show to me as well, and it was very, very, very nice to see him, and he gave me the biggest, sweatiest hug in the world, and he's an incredibly nice man. His episode, again, really, really fun to record. It's worth going back to listening to it, or listening to it for the first time, I think. And here is a taster of the sort of thing that we were talking about. So when you guys are like out touring around then, is it a fairly eclectic mix which is coming on over the CD player?
Fuck yeah. I mean, I do a lot of I've got like ADHD. I've always had ADHD, and Bungle's a teetotaler. So, and like he's a recovering alcoholic. So he doesn't drink at all anymore. And Gibbs and I get shit-faced. So what will normally happen is that I'll do the day's driving to get to the venue, get to the gig. And then Bungle will pour us into the van, and he'll drive to wherever we're staying for the night. So I always subject the lads to whatever I've been listening to at the time. So American Steel recently, Boy and Bear. I fucking love American Steel. Just a big shout out to anyone who's listening. Go check out American Steel, like for one of my favourite new bands. Menzingers, Pup, Dinosaur Pile Up. Like there's a bunch of bands that we love and are staples in the van. Tom Petty's always a great one when you're cruising along an American highway, and then every now and again someone else gets on the fucking mixer and everyone puts their headphones in. So yeah.
I'm sure if I ask them any of that, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, no, he puts it on, but we've all got headphones here."
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Definitely. They would all say, "Yeah, we're fucking fed up of listening to the same shit that he always makes us listen to." But there was one, there was one journey in particular that we'd all had about an hour and a half sleep, and we were driving from one side of Germany to the other, and we were all hungover and the rest of it, like. On this journey, and I can't remember who was up front of me. I think it might have been Bungle, but we played the Ruse Bulletproof 119 times in a row. And they were so fucked off. Everyone in the back went from like, "What are you doing?" to, "Yeah, this is kind of fun," realizing we weren't going to stop. And like we sang nearly every time. And like when it came to like 100 plus plays, they were just sitting in the back of the van, faces like thunder, headphones and then pillows around their head because it's such a top endy song as well. So no, there's we listen to some shit in summary.
Okay, so next up we have a clip from my chat with Beans on Toast. Recording this one sticks in my mind for a few reasons. The main one being that I was doing it in a middle of a literal building site, I had my laptop propped up on sort of a decorator's table, and I was surrounded by paint tins and whatnot when we were doing it. So I think it became a little bit echoey, but it all seems to be fine. This is a great little story from Beans. Really, really funny. He's an incredibly funny man. Since we've had this chat, he's had another album out, Survival of the Friendliest, which came out a few weeks ago now, and really, really, really worth listening to. I've loved it. I'm a big fan of Beans, so I'm always going to say that. He also has a couple of books, if you go on his website, Foolhardy Folk Tales and Drunk Folk Stories, both of which are full of incredible stories, along the lines of the one that he tells in this clip now as well. If you enjoy it, I really recommend you get those books. And I believe you can actually even get them on audiobook as well, which you should definitely go and do. But here is Beans. Album with the most interesting backstory. What's the album and what's the backstory to it?
How long have you got?
I've got as long as you have.
The album is The Software Slump by Grandaddy. And I'm actually working on my my second book at the moment, and one of the stories in it is about Grandaddy. So when you said interesting backstory, I was like, well, fucking hell, I've been freshening this one up. But back when I first moved to London, again, what was this, very early 2000s, I used to work as like a flyer guy, and through lack of funds, I used to basically sneak into gigs. And my way of getting into gigs, I used to go to gigs at the Astoria in the West End. And I'd turn up, I used to call it the 5 o'clock blag. And I'd turn up at 5 o'clock with a pen and paper. And I'd just go to the door and be like, oh, I'm here from Viper magazine to interview the band. And because like the promoter hadn't shown up or the security or hadn't shown up, it was just like a dude that used to sit on the door at the Astoria, and he'd just nod me in. And I'd go in and sit and hide in the toilets until 7 o'clock when the doors opened, and I'd just go to the gig for free. And I did it a lot. And I got really cocky with it. In the end, I wasn't even hiding in the toilets. I was just go in. I just realized that if you look like you're supposed to be there, nobody questioned it. You just walk around nodding at people. All right. I'm just like learning about sound checks and shit. And Grandaddy, who were my fucking favorite band at the time. And again, not to sort of hark back too much, but it's like, I was obsessed with the band, but I knew nothing about them. I had their first album on CD. I had Under the Western Freeway. They weren't in any music magazines that I'd ever seen. Like, I'd never seen a photograph of them. I didn't know where they was from. Not that I cared. That was kind of how you sort of listen to music back then. But I loved this album. And they were playing at the Dingwalls. In Camden. So I was like, I'd never done the 5 o'clock blag at such a small venue. It works because of the bigness of the venue. But I was like, and because I was so nervous about not getting in and a small venue, I was kind of off my game a little bit. But like, I walked in, and rather than being like, oh, I'm here for blah, 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 like, this guy was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm here to interview the band. And then he was like, okay, 1 second. Their press officer came over. And basically she was like, oh, right. I was like, I'm here from before. Normally I'd be like, oh yeah, from Viper magazine, really cocky. And then I was like this nervous little kid. I was like, oh, I'm here from Viper magazine. It's like a student magazine. And she was like, well, she got her fucking schedule out. And she's like, oh, I've not seen you on the schedule. And she went, all right, the guys are ready now, actually. Do you want to just come through and do it? So I walked through following this fucking woman and sat in the dressing room. And I was like, I just sat down, and Grandaddy got like, turns out they're like big guys, like farmers, like with massive beards, like baseball caps. So it's like, I just went into this tiny little dressing room and sat down with my pen and paper, and I started to interview them, and I was just like, fuck, I can't do it. Like I'll just come clean. And I was just like, look, I don't work for a magazine. I use this as a blag to get into gigs. I love your band, but and I thought they'd be like, yeah, man, fucking high five. Cool. And they were like, what? Why don't you buy a ticket like everyone else? And I was like, well, I don't have any money, man. And in the end, they was like, all right, they said, here's the deal. Because they was promoting the Software Slump, their new album, which was out the following week. And they basically put me to work in exchange for being able to see the gig. And they had all these posters that had the wrong date printed. And the singer, Jason Light, he was like, if you rip off the corner of all these posters, so the wrong date's gone, and you put the posters up, you can stay and watch the gig. And I'll tell you, I fucking put the stack of posters was like that big. In the ding walls, there wasn't a piece of wall that didn't have a poster on it. I did the fucking ceiling, like just went to town on it. And the merch stand was like a shrine to the Software Slump. And they gave me a free copy of the album at the end of the gig. And I was like, thank you. It weren't even out, So I got it early and listened to it. Still a good record.
Yeah, I'm so glad I left that till last, like as a category. That's an incredible story.
Like I said, it's fresh in my mind because I've been writing it up. So,
so the album itself, like I listened to it today, and like it's a really good album. Like it's a really slow, atmospheric album, and like there's not a happy song on there.
No, it's like, but it's kind of like they're so mysterious. Like I said, I knew so little about them, and it was kind of like really futuristic, but also kind of like a desert or something like that as well. It's like nature, and like the gig at the at Dingwalls, they'd like had fucking loads of shrubbery. They'd like just like pulled down trees on the like in the afternoon. It seemed, and like gaffer taped them around the stage, and they had loads of like really old keyboards. There's a lot of sounds, and again, this goes back to this kind of like not having access to everything. The first album, I didn't even know how the sounds were being made. Like it was like, what is making that fucking noise? And it turns out it was synthesizers, but at the time, because it was kind of in this kind of indie rock sphere, and they was just like, just using equipment. It's very kind of spacey and. Yeah, just like absolutely fascinating. But yeah, maybe not the cheeriest music. You're right.
So we are on to the last clip. So this comes from the episode I recorded with Mark and Luke from Call Me Malcolm, a UK-based ska band. If you haven't heard them before, this episode was definitely the longest record I did so far. I think it came in about 2.5 hours. 3 hours maybe, with a editing process which I'm going to say was challenging, but it's so much fun. We ended up having to cut so much great stuff out of this episode. In the episode there is about a 20 to 30 minute conversation around Metallica's Saint Anger album, and I honestly believe that we could have done a 3-hour episode just on that single album. It was a passionate debate ensues, I think, and it's worth checking that out. So this clip is actually going to be talking about the first albums that the guys ever purchased. Because there was 2 people on, we did something a little bit different. We asked each person to introduce their album, talk about it a little bit, and then we decided which one was better. Go check out the whole episode. It's really fun, and check out the guys' album from 2019. I think it was Me, Myself, and Someone Else. It's absolutely brilliant. And if you get a chance to see them live, go do that as well. I have a couple of times since we recorded this been able to see it and seen the guys, and I can tell you that they are as nice and fun in person as they are on this episode as well.
First category is first purchase. So the first person to reveal is going to be Mark. But Luke, do you want to go first at what your guess is of what Mark's first purchase was?
I will 1000% say he will not guess this.
Okay.
And if you guess this, you are some kind of demon child.
Mark's a music connoisseur. So my gut instinct would initially to go for something like Beethoven's Greatest Hits or something like that. But knowing that he is 5 years younger than me and how horrendous my first purchase was, I'm going to figure something popular in around the time he was buying music. So I don't know what the name of the album was, but it's going to be like Five, the band Five.
If I could just step in at this point and say it's worse than that as well.
I'm so happy. Please proceed.
I mean, can I take Five as my answer? That would be ideal, really, from my point of view.
I'm gonna go with what I've got written down. Mark, do you wanna Do you want to tell us what it was, and do you want to tell us a story behind you getting it as well?
My first purchase was Aqua Aquarium.
Oh, that is glorious.
Which is just like, I mean, Barbie Girl is a seminal work. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's sprawling, like it's just a piece of art, and it's really important that we recognise that actually the whole album is filled with bangers, and that actually it's the 7-minute metal track at the end that really like brings it to a close that I love. It's a storming album. Yeah, if I'm honest, I kind of looked it up and then I kind of cringed at myself at the fact that I'd already sent the list to you, and I kind of thought, oh, I'll make up something cool. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I was like, no, I need to be honest with myself in this list. So yeah, it was kind of like it was one of those things where it's like I bought loads of singles, and it was like I was at the point where like they just introduced CDs and stuff like in terms of singles and things, and so I just remember like holding the whole album in my hands and going, wow, it's like a really thick single, like, you know, like I'm really super impressed. It's going to have like Barbie Girl but loads of other weird stuff on it. Amazing. What is this? Turns out it was 11 versions of Barbie Girl, but that's not the point. The point is that I had a dream at that juncture.
Well, as I said before we started recording, when people send me over albums, I give them all a listen before we sort of record and stuff.
Oh
so
God,
I sat
I'm
down.
so sorry. I actually hadn't got that when you said it.
It was it was slightly uncomfortable when my partner walked in, trying to figure out what on earth I was listening to. I've got to say that it's not an album for me. How old were you when you brought this? Do you remember where you got it from?
Oh, I mean, it would have almost certainly been our price in Dover, because I just bought I bought either there or like W.H. Smith or Woolworths in Dover. That's about the only three places that I think I bought nearly everything. No, actually, I don't think I did go into our price, because I don't think I was quite. I think I probably would have thought to myself at that age, no, that's where people go and buy the proper music. I'm not allowed in there yet. Like, and I would have bought it from W.H. Smith's and walked to the counter, because I seem to remember buying Chef's chocolate salty balls in W.H. Smith around about the same time. So I'm fairly sure it was all then.
We can date that to almost the day, I think.
My brain started immediately doing the same thing. I was like, oh, okay, so yeah, late 90s. Yeah.
So did you start buying a lot of music around this time, or was this the start of the Great Collection, or did you wait a little bit?
No, see, the thing is that like, so what I used to do, and I've actually, Luke will know this because he actually proofread it for me. I actually said this in my sister's wedding speech recently, was that what I actually used to do was I used to steal all of my sister's albums, and so she used to listen to loads of pop and like bits and pieces and stuff like that, and like I just used to steal everything relentlessly, or we would listen to stuff with like headphones shared in the cars and things, and so whatever she was into, like, was kind of like the stuff that I got into. So yeah, it was like Spice Girls and like things like that, but I kind of never really bought my own stuff. And then I think she got to the point of saying, you can go and do the same thing with your pocket money that I go and do, and go and get it yourself, i.e. get out of my room. Like, so just that's kind of what I did. And then I sort of decided the first purchase was Aqua.
Do you remember your second purchase? Is it any better?
I don't know. It's a tough one. You'd have to come back to me on that one. I'm gonna say as well that Britney Spears Hit Me Baby One More Time, the album or whatever that was called, was definitely one of the first purchases too, which was definitely again bought for musical content. So I think that's important to recognise.
Okay, we're going to go for Luke's first purchase now. Mark, do you want to have a guess on what it is?
See, he's 5 years older than me, so I would also go with the greatest hits of Beethoven, but when it was released.
Do you have a guess, Mark?
No, I mean, I would always just default to Bon Jovi for you, because you're just like this massive Bon Jovi fan.
No,
right?
That's actually a fine guess, but the problem was that I didn't have. I do have an older sister, but I wasn't going to be stealing her music. She was listening to Madonna. My dad owned countless Bon Jovi and Status Quo albums, so I didn't need to steal those.
Status Quo.
Yeah. Oh, so my first actual real life purchase with pocket money was Pet Shop Boys discography.
My goodness.
Then Aqua. To be honest, if I had the Aqua album, I'd still listen to that. I haven't listened to the Pet Shop Boys in a while.
I mean, I don't think Alex will back you up on that on the basis of having listened to it, whether it actually stands the test of time.
Of course, you listen to it. I haven't listened to it in years. How did you feel going through it as homework?
I quite liked it. Like, Pet Shop Boys are a band that I'm not going to go and put an album on, but like this, which is essentially a greatest hits, like it's a singles collection, is pretty good. It's got stuff like Western Girls on there. I think It's a Sin on there. There's a few solid bangers that stand up, I think.
I think It's a Sin was probably the reason I bought it, or one of the first reasons I bought it. But I remember like adverts, TV adverts for albums. I definitely saw the advert for this, and they would show you like little clips of songs. And I think at the time, just being like, It's a Sin is great. Oh, that song's good. Or that song sounds cool as well. So it was a bit of a no-brainer as a 10 or 11-year-old or whenever it was. But yeah, that's there's not really an awful lot of interesting detail behind it. It's just a slightly uncool purchase for a young person getting into music. When Mark was talking about his, I wonder when you're that young, like if your music kind of taste is less developed and being you go for like the simpler tunes. And the connection between us both having like electronic based first purchases when there was plenty of good guitar music around at the time, why we went for those ahead of anything else. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I should just be going.
No, we almost didn't answer the compilation. I almost answered the compilation question. The one I've given you actually on the list, Alex, is like it's kind of that one and another one that were kind of like my favorite ones. But my first one was like this kind of like the best of Euphoria, and the first track is like Robert Miles' Children, and I actually heard it like a few weeks ago, and I was like, I just got transported back to being like 4, and I was like, or however old I was like, oh my god, like this is just, what is this? Like, so I think actually we were just being pushed loads of house and trance at that age. I think that's why everything kind of had this electronica thing, because we were coming out of like the 80s, like obviously you were sort of deep in the 80s, but
I remember, I was deep in the 80s. I remember as a family, we'd watch Top of the Pops every week, and I just remember spending most Thursday nights in the 90s being absolutely furious at the bad music they were playing, and just wanting anything. I just want a guitar in it. I just want a guitar on that stage, like just some kind of music with guitars. So, like to answer my prayers, I got given Oasis and Blur, who I hated both of them when they came out.
Wow, there is no pleasing some people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, but I was thankful.
It's like a great musical movement of like sort of rock and roll music. Like, nope, I was quite clear.
Well, Oasis bored me, and I wasn't smart enough to get Blur. So
did you not just get a keytar instead? Like, was that not what you should have done? Was like do the transition and get a keytar?
You can take the child out of the 80s, but you can't.
Shoulder pads and a keytar, man.
I always wanted a keytar. Absolutely.
I mean, I know what to get you for Christmas.
Clock's ticking, mate. 15 days.
I could get that drone to your house.
I thought there'd be more consensus at this point around whose pick was better.
Oh no, his is right. No, his is right. No, sorry, just to be absolutely crystal on this, he has won this round.
I forgot we were meant to pick one of them.
No, he's a normal human being. I've lost it.
Aqua. I feel bad about putting the Aqua album in the bin, though.
Oh my god.
Don't feel bad about it.
Look, we made Alex listen to it.
I really like Dr. Jones as a track. I think that
was
kind
Dr.
of went
Jones on that record though.
Oh, okay.
I think Dr. Jones might have been sort of their later, more proggy stuff. Like,
oh shit! Put it in the bin then. Put it in the bin.
I think it was on the album.
Oh, was it?
The problem, I think so. The problem is that all of the, like you said earlier, all of the tracks on it are the same track. There's like 11 tracks which are the same.
This reminds me. I can't remember what. I was on a long car journey, which is very typical of being in a band, and at one point thinking, I don't know any other tracks by Scatman John other than the Scatman. I wonder what his back catalogue is like.
I made this mistake with so many bands. I have done this so many times. I did this with the Gypsy Kings. They have at the time when I found their discography, they have 19 albums and they are all Bumbaleo. Like, no lying. But I really like that song. So, like 2 albums in, I was like, no, this is just lots of this. I don't know what I was expecting. Do you know what I mean?
No, I will let you now, so you don't have to check that there is a significant drop off from the Scatman to the rest of Scatman John's material.
So there you go. That's all of the clips for this roundup of season 1. I just want to say thank you to everyone whose voices you've just heard, as well as everyone else who's been on the episode. I couldn't put everyone in. I couldn't put all my favourite moments in. But there, you should go and check out all the old episodes. And a massive thank you to everyone who gave up any of their time to be involved. I'm going to apologise now, the wrong time to, but I'm going to apologise now for the editing in the episode you just heard. I put this together in the space of about an hour and a half on New Year's Eve before sort of getting ready to go out, as I wanted it to go out on New Year's Day. I've been a little bit busier over Christmas than I was expecting. And I have been starting to plan a wedding as well. So if anything sounds a little bit odd in what you just heard, that's my excuse and that's what I'm sticking to. But presumably if you've made it to the end, you probably don't really care that much. But most importantly, I also want to thank everyone who has listened to an episode across the last 12 months. Even if today is the first one you've ever listened to, thank you so much. Massive extra thank you as well to everyone who sent me a message, anyone that shared an episode, posted it on social media, sent it to a friend, any of that stuff, or anyone who's rated us online. If you want to do any of those things, I would be very, very happy about it. As I said at the beginning, season 2 will be with you as soon as I can get it edited. There's some absolutely great moments in new series as well. I'm very excited to sort of get those out and hear what you guys think about them. As always, you can find me on social media. I am at vinyl__tap on Instagram. I'm at It's Record Time on Twitter. And you can send me an email on itsrecordtimepodcast@gmail.com. I love people sending me messages, so please do. It's always very nice. That's it. Hopefully I'll speak to you in some point in the next few weeks. I hope you will have an absolutely fantastic 2022. And I will speak to you all soon. Thanks. Bye.